down the line, and then it came to the labeling machine, and the labeling machine had a big arm that came down from the top. It picked up a label, and it kind of slapped the label on the bottle. It wasn't gentle at all.
Yeah.
And then some of those warm bottles would go bang, and the glass would start flying.
So he was a part of the bottling thing. Now I did have some information here. Oh, the first bottles were like in 1879. Someone had invented a screw top bottle, and 1935 was the first steel cans for putting beer, and Coors had the first aluminum can in 1959, and Schlitz in 1960 put aluminum tops on steel cans. So is that according to your information too? This is Rich Yar, and he has a huge collection of everything, all different beers you have, but he has a lot of the West End things. And so he's brought some things here for you to look at after a while. Oh, and getting back to Claude's dad, they did, I have to get this. The West End Brewery did brew a beer called Black Bride, and it was something that they wanted to market to the African American people in Milwaukee.
Chicago.
Oh, in Chicago, okay.
Could you hold the box up, because I can't figure out how to get a picture of it. Okay, thank you.
And I think I've seen the labels online when I looked for the different labels that they had, but they did, but they only had about a couple of orders, and then that just didn't go over well. I don't know what had happened, but and I did miss a part back here where when we were making our beer, the beer that they make today had to be they had carbonation added to it and pasteurization and things like that, where we were back here in the 1850s, yet we didn't do all of that kind of stuff. So, but later on, I think the beer probably at that time too, it wasn't as carbonated. It was probably pretty flat, but they didn't care. It was still beer. It was good. So, okay. And the brewmasters, like I said, was Tom Hype was probably the last brewmaster at West Bend, and now we're getting into the Prohibition era, which was, I always thought it was only a couple of years, but it was actually from 1919 to 1933, and that was a really long time, I thought. But anyways, during Prohibition, a lot of the smaller breweries went out of business because they couldn't hang on. What could they do? And I did find one label here that it was called their Easter Brew, and Rich, you said you have that label, and it says right on there that it was 0.5% to 1% alcohol. So I'm assuming that that was a beer that they brewed during Prohibition because you couldn't have the full strength of alcohol like you could otherwise in the beer. And they did a lot more. They started using the malt a lot, and for the malted milk industry, the West Bend Brewery then tried to make a product called Lithia Be Sure, and that didn't go over too well with the Germans. So I think most of the people were probably either brewing their own beer at home or other things, because we have all the stories in Barton here of what happened when the feds were coming through, and where did they go with all the liquor and stuff in the taverns, because they weren't supposed to have any, but they all did. And so we have all kinds of stories about that. But anyways, getting back to our brewery now, a friend of ours had an uncle that worked there, and there was Howard Tradle worked there, and Harold Leonards. I don't know if anybody knows any of those people. And this would be like the very end of the time. The brewery then was was closed in 1972, and probably because the other larger breweries, like I said, they couldn't compete with the larger breweries that we had at that time. And by that time you had Schlitz and Pabst and Miller and the really big breweries in Milwaukee, and that was, you couldn't possibly compete with that. So, and we did the Black Pride, huh? And then by this time now, the brewery is closing, and many people had memories of going down there. I have to go back, the Meyer brothers also were in the ice harvesting business when the railroad finally did come through, and so all along the river. I do have some pictures here of where you can see the old ice houses and the back side of the brewery, and you see the ice houses along the river where they did harvest the ice. But in 1972, they closed down, and the West Bend Brewery closed. They, at that time, had 24 employees, and I think most of this came from Judy's website. And in the 25 years after Prohibition, the brewery had paid $200,000 in real estate taxes. They bought $1.5 million of barley from local farmers. They had a $3 million payroll, and $9 million in state and federal taxes. So it was quite a loss to the community to lose such an industry here, but they did, and I guess they were sad to see it go. So are there any other additions? I'm sure you all have your little stories about the brewery, or anybody that worked here at the brewery. Claude?
Picture in your painting of the coffee shop.
What?
In the day, I grew up just across the street, and I was lower grade school. And the brewery, back in those days, they had a collector that went around collecting the bills. His name was Jake Schaefer. He had a great big leather pouch, and he'd give the billing statement to the tavern keepers. They'd pay him, he'd take the money with him. And the kids in the neighborhood all knew that when Jake was coming, they had it all cased out already. They'd gather in a group, because he'd go along to the little kids, myself included. He'd pinch their ear and say, "What have you got back here?" It was a nickel. And he'd say, "Oh, do you want that? Is that yours?" And they'd say, "Well, yeah." So he'd give them the nickel. Some got a penny, some got a nickel, but everybody got something. And then he'd move, like the three taverns, my folks, Frankie Kirker and Al Rick, and the kids would just go right along with him. Quite an attraction, really.
And early on, the beer was delivered with the horse and wagon, of course, and then their first beer truck, I think, came from the Kissel factory in Hartford, and so then they had the truck to
You know,
deliver.
Eileen, the brewery also delivered ice.
Okay.
And back in the day, when we had ice boxes, there were no
Yeah.
refrigerators, you know, and they did deliver ice also.
Yeah. Okay. Someone else was.
I didn't know if that was the cobbler shop in your painting now. Is that the same building? That's what's now Ray Shoes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There should be steps
It,
there.
what?
There's steps going up to that counter, because that's the office.
That's right. There are steps on the maybe they lowered the street. They lowered the street, they raised the street in Barton how many times, and up and down, so that's a good part. I never thought of that. But, oh, and we had one other thing that Claude had told me, that Iron Mike Hildebrand.
My dad.
Oh, your dad! Oh my goodness, that he worked at the brewery, and he. You did too?
Claude's father.
Oh, okay, and he worked there stacking, what, crates or something?
Railroad cars full of this stuff.
Okay.
But I was
Oh.
with the